Hello and welcome to Virtualize Everything. Today we're going to be taking a look at another penetration testing operating system. This one's called BackBox and it's brought to you by BackBox.org. It's very similar to Pirate and Kali and probably CSI Linux as well, which are some of the other ones we've covered install videos on in this channel. But today we're going to be taking a look at how to install this one. So the first thing we're going to need to do is navigate to their website, which I've already done, backbox.org, and we're going to need to click on Linux. Clicking on Linux is going to bring us up this nice fancy screen that tells us a little bit about BackBox and the creators of BackBox. We're going to click on download and then we need to set some options. But BackBox is really nice to give us our hashes and everything we're going to need to know without having to click on other links. We're going to choose from torrent to ISO. We'll use mirror 1. We'll change to US dollar, not that it matters, because if we read here, we don't have to do a donation if we set 0. So let's set 0. I hope some of you do go ahead and donate. But for now, today, we're going to use 0. We'll click download, and download brings me initially to a download box that looks like this. So let's go ahead and hit cancel, right click on download, and we don't have an option to copy URL. So we're going to have to download this separately to our system. So we'll download this by hitting save. I'll be back with you when this is done downloading and show you how to upload it to Proxmox from our client system. Now that our black box file has finished downloading, we can head over to Proxmox. Here at Proxmox, I've already selected our drive, but we can select our default local drive if we'd like to use it, and then select ISO images. I will be, for storage concerns, using a drive that I've added secondary to Proxmox called storage. Local would be fine if you don't have this drive. Here, I've also selected ISO images, and I'm going to select upload. That's because we're unable to actually do a direct download to our Proxmox server due to the way the black box website is set up. I'm now going to click select file, and I'll drag my black box ISO image into this window where I can pre-select it and open it. Now, Blackbox has provided us with a hash algorithm, so let's go ahead and take advantage of Proxmox's hashing feature to verify that this image is correct to what Blackbox says it's supposed to be. So here we'll select SHA 256, head to Blackbox's website. I'll select the SHA 256 hash, copy it, go to Proxmox, and paste it in where it says checksum, then press upload. I'll be back with you when this upload has finished. Okay, so now that we have BackBox uploaded to our Proxmox server, it's time to set up our VM so we can actually install it and begin using it. So let's go ahead and close out the screen if you already haven't that says our data copied successfully. And then we'll select our Proxmox server and come up here and select Create VM. Now Proxmox by default is going to give you a VM ID number. You can change this if you would like for organizational purposes. I will be leaving mine alone by default today. Now we can give it a name. We'll call ours BackBox today. You can call yours whatever you desire. And if you have your advanced button checked, which I suggest you keep checked, it'll unlock a lot of other options for you that may be helpful for configuring your VM. In the future, you can set tags. You can also use the start on boot option to have this VM boot up when your Proxmox system boots up. For something like BackBox, this is probably not as desired, but it is able to be set. You can also set your orders, your startup delay, and your shutdown timeout features. And what this will allow you to do if you have like multiple different VMs that are linked together, you can actually have it delay starting up so one starts up fully, or set it up so that one can start up before another one. This can also help somewhat with resource management if you have limited resources. Here under tags, we can just simply set predefined tags, by clicking the plus tag, and I have a couple of predefined tags, NAS and Linux, set up here. This is a Linux distribution, as most things we do here on this channel is, so we can give it the tag of Linux. Now we can press next and select our OS. And what this screen's going to do is allow us to define our boot disk, or if we're not going to use any at all. And we did upload that particular image to storage, so the default that my system shows me will be correct. But your system may have uploaded to local if local was your system's drive and you didn't have storage or some other drive added. I'm going to leave mine as storage, and then I'm going to select BackBox right here and then press next. Here we can predefine QEMU guest agent and leave everything else the same. Pressing next, we get to define our hard drive, and I'm going to give mine 100 gigs today. 32 is probably fine, but 100 will be more than adequate for projects later on. If you do have an SSD, you want to go ahead and check discard. That'll help preserve some of the life of your SSD. For like read-write options. It's called in Windows trim. You've probably read about it a little bit, but this helps increase the life of your SSD. So you might want to check that feature if you're using an SSD. Pressing next, we define our CPU type. I'm giving this 2 cores, and I'm going to change my CPU type. Now, this is a purely optional step. The default CPU type will work just fine. I find with my particular CPUs, setting it as host gets me better performance. That being said, if this particular VM was to migrate over to a different system with a different CPU or something, we could have problems. So using the default in that scenario may benefit you. Pressing next, we can configure memory, and I'll give mine 4 gigs. This is also another step that you can configure as you wish, but I would suggest using at least 2 gigs. We can also set the minimum memory type as 2 gigs if we wish. So if my system started to run low on RAM for whatever reason, because of the amount of VMs I had running, or because TrueNAS was eating it all up or something that day, it tells us that our VM can go down to 2 gigs. Next is going to be our network configurations. I'm going to leave all of this alone. If you do have custom bridges set up, remember to configure them at this step. Then we're asked to confirm all of our settings. Everything looks good, so we'll press finish, and Proxmox will create our VM. Once this lock symbol goes away, we'll be able to start our VM if we wish and start the installation process, unless we want to add any other custom configurations. If we did want to add custom configurations to this outside of the VM creation tool, we would select it and we'd go to hardware. And one very common custom configuration that I like to do is to configure some different graphics drivers than default. So to do that, we could hit display and edit. And here we can select different types of graphics cards. If you did have Spice installed and were using Spice, you could configure this here. Some of the other ones that I really like is the VirtIO GPU and the VirtGL GPU. And they add a lot of really good GPU performance to desktop environments. They make them work a little bit smoother, even when they're being streamed over no VNC. I'm going to choose VirtIO for my particular instance today, and under clipboard I'm also going to select VNC and press OK. Now, since we have applied our custom configuration to our display settings, we can go ahead and start up this VM, and we can use our console to begin working with it. We'll press enter, and even at this point we're really able to see the benefits of those custom graphics driver, as a lot of times if you've worked with other VMs inside of Proxmox that had desktop environments, your mouse pointer really didn't keep up with your host system's or client system's mouse pointer. And you can see here, it's very smooth and works very well. Now let's start the installation steps. We'll select English and we'll select install BackBox. We're going to use English USA and English USA for the sake of this tutorial. You could configure your customs if you needed to use a different version of English right here at this screen. We'll hit continue. We're going to use our normal installation. Minimal will just give you the bare minimum. For an operating system like this where you're really installing it for the tools that come pre-packaged, I wouldn't suggest using that option. Again, we could also install third-party drivers and pull them in from different sources if we had them, but we're going to be using all of the QEMU drivers and the VirtIO drivers, so they should be prepackaged into this operating system. No worry to do this step. We'll hit continue, and we want to erase the entire disk. We configured our disk when we set up Proxmox, so there's no need to really do any of that custom stuff here during the installation. So we'll hit install, we'll hit continue, we'll set our time zone, give it our name and whatever information we desire, as well as set up our password. We can also set up login automatically. I found in particular cases that login automatically doesn't work all the time, but we will check it so that we can find out if it does work here in this scenario. I also want to mention that logging in automatically may not be the best idea for an operating system like this if for whatever reason you were using it in a scenario where maybe you didn't want someone to see the files that were on the system. We'll hit continue, and the installation will take a few minutes. I'll be back with you when this installation has finished to show you the next steps of enjoying BackBox. All right, so now the installation is finished. We're being asked to restart. So let's go ahead, click restart now. And most of the time, Proxmox removes the installation media from the boot process, so no other steps should need to be taken until this is booted up. I did find that I needed to press enter to have the reboot process finish. Again, I'm pressing enter at this flashing screen, and here we have BackBox up and running on our Proxmox server. Just taking a quick peek around BackBox, you can see that we have, web browser and mail tools and stuff. We also have some stuff like Anonymous, which must be some type of proxy server. We have some auditing tools, some other services, looks like SSH and Tor, some accessories. They look pretty standard for Ubuntu. Development tools, graphics, they look pretty standard. So there's a quick peek. Let's take a look at our Proxmox web interface here by clicking on summary, and you can see there's no screen here displaying guest agent, and it actually says guest agent isn't running. If we look up here at TrueNAS, you can see that we do get an IP output because guest agent is working here on TrueNAS. So let's go to console and see if we can find a terminal. There's a terminal emulator there. The first thing I always do is run an apt update, and I usually always string it together with a apt upgrade and a -y. I'm going to bet this needs sudo because we're not logged in as the root user. So let's also add sudo in front of these two commands. This will update the system and install any available updates for BackBox, getting it up to the spec of what's updatable today. It looks like we have a few to install. I'll be back with you when that installation process is finished, and we'll look at getting QEMU guest agent up and running so that we can have that working and correct communications with our Proxmox system. Actually install guest agent so we can get that up and working. In order to install guest agent, we can enter sudo apt install, and then it's QEMU guest agent, and then our dash Y at the end. And it helps that you don't put a typo in guest. Now guest agent is finished. If you head back to your summary, you'll get the same response. The guest agent is installed. In order to start using guest agent, you're actually going to fully have to shut down this VM. So let's do that. And you'll notice here that I'm shutting it down. I'm not doing a restart or anything else. I'm doing a full shutdown so that the system is powered off. I wait for the green running icon to go away, and then I'll start the system back up. Now with BackBox back up and running and logged in, we can go ahead and go to summary this time, and we report an IP address. So QEMU guest agent is up and running, and Proxmox is getting the correct statistics about this VM. With that, I'm going to go ahead and conclude this installation video. I hope you enjoyed it, and you're now able to start using BackBox on your Proxmox system. As always, have a good night, and please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to help Virtualize Everything continue to grow.